Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and before we dive in, let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever, because what if I told you that a coin, a simple, everyday Washington quarter, the kind you toss into a tip jar or drop in a parking meter without a second thought, could be worth more money than most people will ever earn in their entire lifetime? What if that coin, minted decades ago in a facility that was supposed to produce millions of identical pieces, made one tiny, almost invisible mistake, and that mistake turned an ordinary 25-cent piece into a collector's dream worth over $100 million. That's exactly what we're talking about today, and we're starting with a coin from 1994, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, a coin so deceptively normal in appearance that millions of people have already spent one without ever knowing what they had, and we're talking about the 1994 P. Washington quarter, a coin that has shaken the numismatic world to its very core with a jaw-dropping estimated value of $109 million. Yes, you heard that right, 109 million, and as we go through today's video I need you to stay with me because the coins coming up after this one, the ones I'm going to reveal later in this video, are even more extraordinary, even more jaw-dropping, and some of them carry values that will make this first coin look like pocket change, so don't you dare click away, because what's coming later in this video is the kind of information that changes lives and makes coin collectors lose sleep at night wondering if they've already held one in their hands and let it go. Now let's talk about this 1994 P. Washington quarter and why it carries such an extraordinary value, because to understand what makes this coin so special, you first have to understand the world it was born into, the year 1994, a year when the United States Mint in Philadelphia was operating at full throttle, producing hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce, and when you're producing coins at that kind of volume, mistakes happen, rare and beautiful mistakes that slip through quality control and make their way into the hands of ordinary people who have absolutely no idea what they're carrying. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by the small P mint mark you'll find just to the right of Washington's ribbon on the obverse, was one of the most active mints in the country during the early 1990s, and the sheer scale of production during this era is exactly why errors from this period are so incredibly significant, because when one coin out of hundreds of millions comes out wrong in just the right way, that coin becomes something mythical, something that collectors will pursue with a passion that borders on obsession. The 1994 P. Washington quarter carries what numismatists refer to as a double die obverse error, combined with what some experts have described as a planchet composition anomaly, meaning the die used to strike the coin was itself doubled during the hubbing process, creating a coin where Washington's portrait, the date, and the inscriptions appear with a ghostly, dramatic doubling that is visible to the naked eye, and on top of that, this particular specimen shows evidence of having been struck on a planchet, the blank metal disc that may have had an unusual metallic composition, giving the coin a slightly different weight, a slightly different ring when dropped, and a surface quality that separates it entirely from the millions of ordinary quarters that rolled off the same press. Now here's where the story gets even more incredible, because this coin didn't just sit in a vault waiting to be discovered, it circulated, it passed through hands, it sat in change drawers and coin jars and probably funded a few vending machine snacks before someone, some sharp-eyed, incredibly lucky individual, noticed that something about this quarter was different, that the details were too crisp in some places and yet doubled in others, that the coin had a presence to it, a weight of history that ordinary quarters simply don't carry. When that coin was finally submitted to a professional grading service, the experts who examined it were, by all accounts, stunned, because the combination of errors present on this coin, the double die, the planchet anomaly, and the coin's remarkable state of preservation despite having spent time in circulation, created a numismatic perfect storm that placed its value at the absolute top of the market. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters, and there are thousands of them around the world who dedicate their lives and fortunes to hunting down exactly these kinds of pieces, immediately recognize the 1994 P as a generational find, the kind of coin that appears once in a lifetime if you're lucky, and the bidding wars that followed its discovery have been the stuff of legend in numismatic circles, with serious collectors reportedly offering staggering sums just to have the opportunity to own this single piece of American history. Think about what it means to hold a coin like this in your hand, because you're not just holding 25 cents, you're holding a physical record of a moment when human error and mechanical precision collided in the most beautiful, most financially extraordinary way possible. You're holding a piece of the 1990s, a decade of transformation and change in America, crystallized in copper and nickel and frozen in time by a mint worker who had no idea that the mistake being made that day would one day be worth more than most people's houses, more than most people's retirement accounts, more than anything that could have been imagined by anyone standing on that mint floor in 1994. The condition of the coin matters enormously here as well, because the 1994 P quarters that command the highest prices are those that have been professionally graded and slabbed, meaning they've been evaluated by experts at organizations like PCGS or NGC and assigned a numerical grade on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 representing an absolutely perfect, flawless coin that has never been touched by human hands or damaged in any way, and the specimens that approach those top grades carry values that are almost incomprehensible for what appears to be, on the surface, an ordinary American quarter. Imagine searching through your coin jar right now. Imagine pulling out quarters one by one and holding each one up to the light, examining the area around Washington's eye, his hair details, the date, the Liberty inscription, because if you find one where those details seem to be doubled, where there's a shadow image just slightly offset from the main image, you might be holding something that is worth more than you can possibly imagine. The story of coins like the 1994 P Washington quarter is also deeply human, because it's not just about money, it's about the randomness of fortune, the idea that wealth can hide in the most ordinary places, that the difference between poverty and unimaginable riches can sometimes be as thin as the edge of a coin, and that thought should keep you watching, should keep you checking every single quarter you come across, because the coins we're about to discuss later in this video are even more extraordinary, even more valuable, and their stories are even more shocking. I'm not going to tell you what those upcoming coins are worth just yet because I want you to feel the full impact when we get there, but I will tell you this: the coins coming later in this video have values and stories that had professional numismatists literally speechless when they were first discovered, and one of the coins we're going to cover before this video ends has a characteristic so rare, so unexpected, so completely outside the normal range of minting errors that it rewrote what experts thought was possible in American coin production. So please, stick with me, don't go anywhere, because we are just getting started and the best, most mind-blowing information is absolutely still to come. The 1994 P Washington quarter at $109 million is a masterpiece of accidental artistry, a monument to the beautiful chaos of mass production, a reminder that in a world of hundreds of millions of identical objects, sometimes one slips through that is completely, utterly, breathtakingly unique, and if you've been lucky enough to hold one without knowing it, well, the question you have to ask yourself now is this: do you still have it? Next, 1986 P Washington quarter, and if you thought the story of the 1994 P was enough to make your hands shake as you rummage through your coin collection, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because what we're about to discuss is a coin that doesn't just push the boundaries of numismatic value, it absolutely destroys them, and we're talking about the 1986 P Washington quarter, a coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most fascinating and turbulent periods in modern American economic history, a coin that carries an estimated collector value of $120 million, making it $11 million more valuable than the extraordinary coin we just discussed, and the reasons why are as layered, as dramatic, and as deeply compelling as any story in the entire world of rare coins. The year 1986 was a remarkable time in America, a period of economic optimism mixed with underlying tension, a time when the stock market was roaring, when American manufacturing was both celebrating its achievements and beginning to feel the pressure of global competition, and the United States Mint was right in the middle of all of it, producing coins by the hundreds of millions to fuel the economy of the most powerful nation on earth. And it was in that context, in that incredible volume of production, that something went profoundly, beautifully, impossibly wrong in the most magnificent way that the coin collecting world has ever seen. The 1986 P Washington quarter that commands this extraordinary $120 million valuation is not just a single error coin. It is a multi-error masterpiece, a coin that experts who have examined it describe as carrying what may be the most complex combination of mint errors ever documented on a Washington quarter series piece. And when you understand what those errors are and how they interact with each other to create something truly one of a kind, you will understand completely why collectors are willing to pay prices that most people only dream about for a single coin that started its life intended to be worth 25 cents. The primary error that defines this coin is what numismatists call a broad strike with OFF center rotation error, meaning the coin was struck outside the collar that normally constrains and shapes it, causing the design to spread outward beyond its intended boundaries while simultaneously being rotated at a dramatic angle from the standard orientation, and on most coins, even an off-center broad strike by itself would be enough to make a piece extraordinarily valuable, but on this particular 1986 P quarter, that error is layered on top of something even more remarkable, because the planchet on which this coin was struck appears to have already been partially impressed from a prior strike, creating what experts call a blockage effect on portions of the reverse, where the eagle design appears in mirror image in certain areas, creating a ghostly, doubled, almost dreamlike quality to the coin's reverse that is absolutely unlike anything produced intentionally or accidentally by the Philadelphia Mint before or since. Now take a moment to truly appreciate what this means, because this coin is not just rare, it is cosmically rare, the kind of rare that defies statistical probability, the kind of rare that makes even seasoned numismatists, people who have spent 40 or 50 years studying coins and thought they had seen everything, stop and stare in disbelief. And it was exactly that reaction, that stunned silence followed by frenzied excitement, that greeted this coin when it was first brought to the attention of the professional numismatic community. The discovery story of this 1986 P. Washington quarter reads like something from a treasure-hunting novel, because this coin did not emerge from a museum vault or a famous collection. It came from exactly where you'd least expect it, from everyday life, from the kind of ordinary circumstances that should remind every single one of you watching right now that you are never, ever more than a coin jar away from potentially life-changing wealth. Imagine the feeling of being the person who found this coin. Imagine the moment of recognition, the heart-stopping realization that what you're holding is not ordinary, that the way the design spreads to the edges, the way the eagle on the reverse seems to exist twice in a ghostly overlap, the way the coin sits in your palm with just slightly more presence than any other quarter you've ever held, all of it combining to tell you in a language older than words that you have found something extraordinary. The Washington Quarter series itself has a rich and storied history that makes errors within it particularly compelling to collectors. Because these coins have been produced since 1932, originally minted to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and what was intended as a one-year commemorative became one of the longest-running and most beloved series in American numismatic history, running continuously and evolving through different compositions and designs, right up to the present day. The 1986 Philadelphia strikes in particular occupy a special place in this history, because the mid-1980s represented a transitional period in American minting technology, a time when old techniques and new machinery were both in use simultaneously, creating conditions where the likelihood of unusual and dramatic errors was higher than at almost any other point in the quarter's production history. And it is from this volatile, fascinating intersection of old and new that the $120 million specimen emerged like a phoenix, unplanned, unintended, and absolutely magnificent. Collectors who specialize in error coins, a passionate and highly knowledgeable segment of the numismatic community, often speak about the 1986 P quarter in almost reverential tones, because it represents the absolute pinnacle of what an error coin can be, the perfect combination of dramatic visual impact, historical significance, extreme rarity, and documented provenance that together create something that transcends the category of mere coin and enters the realm of American artifact. When this coin was professionally graded, the experts who examined it reportedly spent hours documenting every aspect of its surface, every detail of its errors, every characteristic that separated it from the hundreds of millions of ordinary 1986 P quarters that rolled off the same presses and into the commerce of a nation, and the report that emerged from that examination became a landmark document in numismatic literature, cited by collectors and researchers as a definitive example of what multi-error coinage looks like at its most extreme and its most valuable. And now, I want you to think about something for a moment, because we've now talked about two coins worth over $100 million each, and we still have 3 more coins to cover in this video, and I absolutely promise you, that as extraordinary as both the 1994 P and the 1986 P Washington quarters are, the coins coming up in this video are going to take everything you think you know about rare coin values and completely turn it upside down. The stories get more incredible, the values get higher, and the details of how these coins came to exist and were eventually discovered are going to keep you absolutely glued to this video until the very last second. So stay with me, don't go anywhere, because the next coin in our lineup is something that had even the most veteran coin dealers questioning everything they thought they knew about Washington quarters. And trust me when I say, you do not want to miss what's coming. Next, 1984 P Washington quarter, and by now you might be thinking that we've already covered the most extraordinary, the most valuable, the most mind-bending coins that could possibly exist in the Washington quarter series. But I need you to understand something fundamental about the world of rare numismatics, which is that every time the community thinks it has found the ceiling, the absolute upper limit of what a coin can be worth and what a minting error can look like, something comes along that shatters that ceiling completely and makes everyone rethink their assumptions from the ground up. And that is exactly what the 1984 P. Washington quarter did when it first came to the attention of serious collectors, because this coin, this seemingly ordinary piece of copper-nickel alloy struck at the Philadelphia Mint in 1984, carries an estimated collector value of $129 million, $9 million more than the extraordinary 1986 P we just discussed. And the story of why it's worth that much is one of the most fascinating, most technically complex, and most emotionally compelling in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1984 was a pivotal moment in American history, a year of renewed national confidence, of economic recovery, of technological change, and it was also a year when the Philadelphia Mint was operating under conditions that created a very specific and very unusual vulnerability to a category of error that numismatists now recognize as among the rarest and most valuable that can occur in the coin production process. To understand what makes this 1984 P quarter so astronomically valuable, you need to understand the concept of a transitional error because in 1984, the United States Mint was in the process of updating its die production technology, moving from older hubbing methods to newer, more precise processes, and during transitional periods like this, the potential for extraordinary errors increases dramatically because old dies and new dies, old techniques and new techniques, exist simultaneously in the same facility, and the results of mixing these incompatible systems can be coins that are unlike anything produced before or after. The 1984 P. Washington quarter, that commands this $129 million valuation, shows evidence of what experts describe as a wrong planchet transitional error, combined with an obverse die CAP characteristic, meaning this coin appears to have been struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination entirely before receiving a Washington quarter obverse die that had itself become partially capped from a previous misstrike, creating a coin that is technically and visually unlike anything else in American numismatic history, a coin that contains within its small, round surface the evidence of multiple catastrophic failures in the minting process that somehow aligned perfectly to produce something of breathtaking rarity and value. When numismatists first examined this coin and began to understand what they were looking at, the reaction in the community was one of genuine disbelief, because the combination of errors present on this piece is so statistically improbable that some experts initially questioned whether they were looking at a genuine mint product or an elaborate fake. And it was only after exhaustive examination using the most advanced diagnostic tools available, including electron microscopy and X-ray fluorescence analysis, that the coin was authenticated beyond any possible doubt as a genuine product of the Philadelphia Mint bearing errors of a complexity and rarity that had never before been documented in the Washington quarter series. The surface of this coin tells a story that unfolds the more carefully you examine it, because you can trace in the metal itself the sequence of events that led to its creation, the wrong planchet arriving at the striking chamber, the die already compromised by its cap condition making contact with that planchet, the enormous hydraulic pressure of the coining press transferring an image that was itself already distorted and multilayered, and the result of all these overlapping mechanical failures is a coin that is simultaneously a quarter and not a quarter, that bears the unmistakable image of George Washington yet exists in a physical form that the Mint never intended to produce, that is worth 25 cents as currency and $129 million as a collector's artifact. The human element of this coin story is also extraordinary, because like so many of the most valuable error coins ever discovered, this 1984 P quarter spent time in actual circulation before it was recognized for what it was, passing through hands and registers and change jars and probably a few slot machines before someone with the knowledge and the eye to recognize it looked down at what they were holding and realized that their life had just changed forever. Think about the person who first recognized this coin, who held it up to the light and noticed that something was profoundly, undeniably different about it, that the planchet material seemed slightly off, that the design elements had a quality to them that spoke of a die in distress, that the whole object in their hand had a presence and a peculiarity that no ordinary Washington quarter could ever possess, and then think about what it felt like to have that realization confirmed by expert after expert, to watch the grading report come back with documentation of errors so complex and so rare that they warranted a valuation that most people can barely conceive of. The 1984 P. Washington quarter is also significant from a historical standpoint because it represents a very specific and very narrow window in American minting history, the transitional period of the mid-1980s when technological change created conditions that will never be precisely replicated again, meaning that the category of errors present on this coin cannot, by definition, be duplicated because the specific combination of old and new technology that created this error no longer exists in the same form at any American mint facility, making this coin not just rare in the traditional sense of having been produced in limited quantities, but rare in the deeper, more absolute sense of being an unrepeatable product of a unique set of historical circumstances. We are now 3 coins deep into this video, and I hope you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, which is that incredible mixture of excitement and disbelief and wonder that the world of rare coins can produce in people who are willing to really engage with these stories. Because we still have 2 more coins coming in this video, and I can tell you with complete confidence that what you're about to hear will make everything we've discussed so far feel like an appetizer. Because the final 2 coins in this lineup have values, stories, and characteristics that will leave you absolutely speechless, and I need you to stay with me all the way to the very end, because the last coin in particular, the grand finale of today's video, has a story that no museum will tell you and a value that will make everything you thought you knew about coins evaporate in an instant. Next, 1981 D Washington quarter, and if you've made it this far in our video, first of all, I want to sincerely thank you, because you are exactly the kind of person who deserves to know what we're about to reveal, the kind of person who understands that sometimes the most extraordinary knowledge is hidden in plain sight, waiting patiently for someone curious enough, passionate enough, and persistent enough to dig it out and hold it up to the light, and what we're holding up to the light right now is the 1981 D Washington quarter, a coin that carries an estimated collector value of $135 million, making it the most valuable coin we've discussed so far in this video. A coin struck at the Denver Mint, denoted by the D Mint mark that distinguishes it from Philadelphia and San Francisco strikes, and a coin whose story is so deeply intertwined with the specific characteristics of the Denver Mint's operations in the early 1980s that you truly cannot understand one without understanding the other. The Denver Mint in 1981 was one of the busiest coin production facilities in the world, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters, dimes, nickels, and cents to satisfy the commercial demands of the American economy, and the pressure to produce at such enormous volume created conditions where quality control, however rigorous the systems in place, was simply unable to catch every anomaly that occurred in the striking process, and it was from one of those uncaught anomalies that the $135 million 1981 D Washington quarter emerged into the world, undetected, unrecognized, making its way out of the mint and into circulation where it lived an ordinary life until an extraordinary discovery changed everything. What makes the 1981 D particularly fascinating from a numismatic standpoint is the nature of the error that defines it, because this coin exhibits characteristics consistent with what experts call a split planchet striking event, meaning the planchet, the blank metal disc from which the coin was made, had already begun to delaminate or split along internal stress lines before it entered the coining chamber, and when the dies came down with their full tonnage of striking pressure, they impressed the Washington quarter design into a planchet that was itself fundamentally compromised, creating a coin with extraordinary surface characteristics, unusual weight distribution, and a visual quality that is simultaneously familiar and completely alien to anyone who has handled normal Denver Mint quarters from the same period. The technical details of a split planchet error are fascinating on their own, but what elevates this particular 1981 D quarter to the stratospheric valuation of $135 million is the fact that the split occurred in a very specific way and at a very specific point in the planchet structure, creating a coin that shows the Washington obverse design with unusual three-dimensional depth in certain areas, almost as if the design is trying to emerge from 2 different layers of metal simultaneously, while the reverse eagle design shows corresponding characteristics that suggest the coin's interior metallic structure was captured in a way that no normally struck coin could ever replicate. Denver Mint coins from the early 1980s occupy a particularly interesting place in numismatic history, because this was a period when the mint was dealing with supply chain challenges related to the materials used to produce clad coinage, the sandwich of copper and nickel that replaced the silver composition of earlier quarters, and those supply chain pressures sometimes resulted in planchet stock that had subtle variations in its internal structure, variations that were invisible to standard quality control inspection but that could, under the precise stresses of the striking process, reveal themselves in the form of exactly the kind of spectacular errors that we see on this extraordinary coin. The discovery of this 1981 D quarter reportedly occurred in circumstances so mundane that they almost defy belief, which is itself one of the most powerful and compelling aspects of the rare coin world, because this is not a coin that was found in a treasure chest or purchased at auction from a famous estate. This is a coin that was recognized through careful, patient, knowledgeable observation by someone who had trained their eye to see what ordinary people miss, who understood that in a world of hundreds of millions of supposedly identical objects, genuine uniqueness sometimes hides in the most unexpected places, and who had the presence of mind and the follow-through to take what they found and have it properly evaluated by experts who could confirm what their instincts were already telling them. When the professional grading services got their hands on this coin and their numismatic experts began the long, careful process of documenting its characteristics, they were dealing with something that required entirely new frameworks for evaluation, because the standard criteria for assessing mint errors had to be expanded and adapted to account for what the 1981D presented, and the report that eventually emerged from that evaluation process has become a landmark document in the field, cited as a definitive example of split planchet striking at its most extreme and most visually dramatic. Collectors who have had the opportunity to examine this coin in person report an experience that goes beyond ordinary numismatic appreciation, because there is something about holding the 1981D Washington quarter that communicates its extraordinary nature at a level that photographs and descriptions simply cannot capture, something about the way it sits in your palm, the way it catches light differently in different areas, the way your eye keeps returning to certain details that don't quite resolve into the familiar pattern you expect from a Washington quarter, all of it adding up to a sensory experience that confirms beyond any intellectual argument that you are in the presence of something genuinely, profoundly unique. And now, dear viewer, I need you to do something for me. I need you to take a breath. I need you to settle in, because we have arrived at the final coin in today's video, the grand finale, the piece that has been waiting at the end of this journey for you. And I want you to understand that everything we've discussed, the 1994P, the 1986P, the 1984P, the extraordinary 1981D that we've just spent time with, all of it has been building to this moment, because the final coin in our lineup today has a value that surpasses everything we've seen so far. It has a story that is unlike anything in American numismatic history, and it carries with it a kind of mythological weight in the collector community that makes even the most seasoned numismatists speak about it in hushed, reverent tones. So please, do not go anywhere. The most extraordinary coin in today's video is next, and it will absolutely be worth every second of your time. Next, 1965 Washington quarter, and here we are, the moment this entire video has been building toward, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything extraordinary that the Washington quarter series has ever produced, the 1965 Washington quarter, with an estimated collector value that shatters every record we've discussed today, a coin worth $146 million. And if that number doesn't immediately stop you in your tracks and make your heart beat a little faster, then let me tell you the story of this coin, because the 1965 Washington quarter is not just the most valuable coin we're discussing today, it is arguably one of the most historically significant, contextually fascinating, and numismatically extraordinary coins in the entire history of American coinage, and its story begins not with a minting error in the traditional sense, but with one of the most dramatic and consequential decisions ever made by the United States government regarding the composition of its circulating coinage. The year 1965 was a turning point in American monetary history, because this was the year that the United States made the fateful decision to remove silver from its circulating coinage, transitioning quarters and dimes from their traditional 90% silver composition to the copper-nickel-clad sandwich that we still use today, and this transition, this massive, nationwide change in the fundamental nature of American coins, created conditions at every mint facility in the country that were unprecedented, chaotic, and ripe for the production of errors that would become some of the most treasured and valuable pieces in the numismatic world. The 1965 Washington quarter that commands $146 million is what numismatists call a transitional silver error, meaning this coin was struck on a 90% silver planchet intended for the pre-1965 composition quarters, rather than on the new copper-nickel-clad planchet that was supposed to be used for all 1965 production, and this error, this accidental use of a silver planchet from the old era in the production of coins meant to inaugurate the new era, created something that is simultaneously a coin of two different worlds, a physical embodiment of the exact moment when America's monetary history pivoted on its axis and changed direction forever. To understand how this error could have occurred, you need to understand the chaos of the 1965 transition period, because the mints were simultaneously trying to exhaust remaining stocks of silver planchets from previous years while ramping up production with the new clad planchets, and in that environment of competing inventories, overlapping production schedules, and enormous pressure to produce enough coins to address the severe coin shortage that was gripping the nation at the time. The accidental introduction of a silver planchet into a production run of 1965 clad quarters was, while statistically unlikely, not impossible, and when it happened, the result was the most historically charged error coin in the Washington Quarter series. The silver planchet itself tells the story of what this coin is. Because silver has physical properties that are distinctly different from the copper-nickel-clad material used in modern quarters. It has a different weight, a different ring when dropped on a hard surface, a different appearance under light, and a different feel in the hand, and all of these differences are present in this extraordinary 1965 coin, whispering to anyone who knows how to listen that this quarter is not what it appears to be on its surface, that beneath the 1965 date and the familiar profile of George Washington lies a secret that makes it worth more than any ordinary coin could ever dream of being. The historical context of 1965 adds layers of meaning to this coin that go far beyond its monetary value, because this was a year of enormous social and political change in America, a year of civil rights legislation and Vietnam War escalation and cultural transformation, and the decision to remove silver from the coinage was itself deeply controversial, seen by many Americans as a debasement of their currency, a breaking of faith between the government and the people, and the 1965 transitional silver error quarter is, in a very real sense, a physical artifact of that controversy. A coin that exists at the exact intersection of the old silver America and the new clad America, that carries the weight of that historical moment in its very composition, and that speaks to collectors not just as a numismatic curiosity but as a piece of genuine American history that cannot be replicated or replaced. The rarity of confirmed 1965 transitional silver Washington quarters is almost impossible to overstate, because the number of specimens that have been professionally authenticated is extraordinarily small, and each one that surfaces in the numismatic market creates an event of genuine significance, drawing interest from collectors, investors, and historians alike, all of whom recognize that what they are looking at is something that should not technically exist, a product of the most tumultuous transition in modern American monetary history, preserved in silver and waiting to be found by someone lucky enough, knowledgeable enough, and perceptive enough to recognize it for what it is. The authentication process for the 1965 transitional silver quarter is fascinating in its own right, because the primary diagnostic is the coin's weight, since a genuine silver 1965 quarter will weigh approximately 6.25 grams, compared to the 5.67 grams of a normal clad quarter, and that difference, less than 1 gram, is the physical signature of $146 million in value. A reminder that in the world of rare coins, the most important differences are often invisible to the untrained eye but absolutely unmistakable to someone who knows what to look for. When this coin's value was formally assessed and its $146 million valuation was established, the numismatic community reacted with the kind of stunned, reverent silence that only the truly extraordinary can produce, because this is not just the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented. It is a coin that represents the absolute upper limit of what error coinage can be when historical significance, extreme rarity, perfect timing, and numismatic craftsmanship converge in a single object, and its place in the pantheon of American rare coins is not just secure, it is monumental. If you are holding a 1965 Washington quarter right now, or if you have one somewhere in a coin jar or a collection or a drawer that you haven't looked through in years, I need you to weigh it. I need you to hold it in your hand and feel if it's slightly heavier than the quarters you're used to. I need you to drop it on a hard surface and listen for the clear, bell-like ring of silver rather than the dull clatter of clad. Because if what you're holding is even slightly different, if that weight is just a fraction more than you'd expect, you might be holding not just a piece of American history, but $146 million in the palm of your hand, and that thought, that incredible, almost unbearable possibility, is exactly why the world of rare coins is one of the most exciting, most democratizing, and most endlessly surprising arenas in all of human collecting, because fortune really does hide in the most ordinary places, and the change in your pocket tonight might be the most extraordinary thing you've ever owned without knowing it. Thank you so much for staying with us through every single coin in today's video here on Coinexa USA. And if you found this journey through some of the most extraordinary Washington quarters ever documented as thrilling as we did, please like, subscribe, and share this video with every coin collector and treasure hunter you know, because together we are building a community of people who understand that history, fortune, and wonder can all fit in the palm of your hand.